Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, because this is a unique opportunity for me on a unique day to greet as many people as possible on a remarkable day in the life of the Archdiocese of San Francisco, the new Diocese of San Jose, and for all of us that have been in the Archdiocese. We were informed during the past week that the Holy Father had decided that there should be a new diocese in San Jose. On Friday, the apostolic delegate called me and said that the Holy Father wanted to appoint me the first bishop, and that the announcement could be made as early as today if we wished. And of course we did wish. I think once the die is cast, it's in everybody's interest to move as quickly as we can.
One more question, Bishop. Have you picked a motto yet?
A motto? Well, my own motto, my personal motto when I was ordained a bishop was Gaudium et Spes, which is the title of the conciliar document on the Church in the modern world. And as far as I'm concerned, is my own agenda, my own vision for what a diocese might become. I don't believe it's customary to assign to a diocese a motto. If I did, I would recommend Gaudium et Spes. Joy and hope are two things that I feel today, and I hope they would remain characteristic of our new church.
Well, there was always kind of rumors, because us that were down here, we that were down here, always felt that San Francisco never really understood Santa Clara County, and we were kind of the forgotten church. And there was always that talk, but nothing that was ever positive. So it really was, I think, kind of a surprise to all of us when the word came out that we were made a diocese. Having spent a good part of my priesthood down here, I knew what it was when I first came here in 1950. San Francisco, in most cases, had no idea what the parishes were or who the priests were. We were like in the boondocks, and it got better as time went on. But as I say, we were ready to become a diocese. The church was strong enough and big enough, and we had certainly enough people. In fact, actually, we had more Catholics than San Francisco at the time we were divided.
I don't take great credit for this, but I take a little credit. The Archbishop Jadot came to the Senate of the Priests of San Francisco one time. At the end of the meeting, I was there, and they said, "Anybody else have anything to say?" And I said, "Well, I'm a priest living in San Jose, and every time there's an issue that's has to be dealt with by the church, it's the president of Santa Clara who gives the church's position." So I said, the Archbishop of San Francisco is just so distant, so removed. It's not an effective position anymore. San Jose should be a diocese.
Did you really?
I did, yeah. And I said so when you go to Rome, what I want you to sing is, "Do you know the way to San Jose?" Anyway,
that's great.
So Jack Panevsky told me that the only thing he wrote down was San Jose. Now, again, I'm sure there was much more about it than that, but it was kind of a nice story.
Oh, I love it. It's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
I think that when you think of the history of our diocese, you have to think of the people that were in place down here. In 1961, 62, in those years, they built almost 25 parishes, brand new. Yep. They all came, a lot of those new pastors came from the same class, and a lot of them moved here because they wanted to come this way. They got a deed to the property, a debt. They got a bill for the loan and go and do it. And the Vatican Council happened. And they had a natural connection with one another. And so they built a spirit, that group of new pastors. And they were talented guys coming out of high schools. And they've been waiting for a parish. And all of a sudden it broke loose so that a lot of them got a parish. So there was a lot of enthusiasm. And the transition in the 60s with the Vatican Council and everything, the Chancery was not very present to the Santa Clara Valley. So when I got back here because I had originally been assigned here at St. Lawrence, when I got back here, there was that enthusiasm still here. And there was also Terrie Sullivan, who had been here a long time as a religious ed coordinator. Right. There was Catholic Charities, Catholic Social Service with Phil Conway and Helen Hansen and this. So there was infrastructure that had learned how to work together with Mentasti and Healy as the two Monsignor kings of the area. They bought land. They did a lot of things that a chancery might do. And there was that spirit that we really could handle it ourselves. Pierre inherited a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of already built networks of people.
I was thrilled and delighted because, to be really honest, all of our Catholic schools in Santa Clara County felt like they were the stepchild. And in fairness to them, we went down usually once a year to visit every principal, but otherwise we really only went to the Santa Clara Valley if there was a problem. First of all, I knew all the principals, and there was just a great community spirit from the very beginning. And then in the United States at that time, one of the most prominent superintendents was a woman by the name of Sister Mary Ann Eckhoff. She was a school sister at Notre Dame. She was the superintendent of St. Louis, Missouri. And she was so prominent in NCEA and just all of the exciting things she was doing. So I invited her in the very beginning to come to San Jose for 3 days to look over our diocese, all of our documents, and say, now, if you were starting, what suggestions would you make? Well, that just made a tremendous difference because Mary Ann made all these suggestions. The principals were terribly excited, and we started right off, right from the very beginning. And it didn't take too long, and San Jose was really on the map, I have to tell you. I mean, originally, everything used to be San Francisco, and in not too many years, it shifted to San Jose.
The Diocese of San Jose early on, because we were new, when we would go to national meetings, and we would tell our story, we were top of the heap.
Oh, we were.
Weren't we like the best?
We were the best. And we would come home so grateful that we lived in our diocese. We're never going to complain again. I mean, we heard horror stories.
That we had permission to do what we did, that we had ingenuity, that we had creativity, that we had people in place who were thinking of these crazy, wonderful things that would bring the church into the next era. I mean, it was powerful time.
We began Renew. I had done some of the first evaluation of the national program. I brought it back and we started Renew. I mean, that first Pierre was just here, and that was one of the first years of Renew for the 5 parishes on the east side, and then we brought it to the whole diocese. So it was the beginning of PACT.
Yes.
People acting in community together. It was the beginning of a lot of the solidifying of some of the early work of Moriarty and Casey and those guys.
I was actually working in the tribunal in San Francisco. Archbishop Quinn was the archbishop, and he called me in and told me that the county of Santa Clara was going to be cut off as the new diocese of San Jose. And I must say I was surprised, and I remember saying to him, can the Archdiocese survive without Santa Clara? At that time, the Archdiocese, though it was much bigger before, but it was now down to 4 counties: Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, and us here in Santa Clara. I thought erroneously that we were giving away 1/4 of the diocese. Later, I found out it was half of the diocese. There's about the same amount of territory in this one diocese of San Jose as there is in all 3 counties in the Archdiocese. But the thing that really shocked me was when the Archbishop and our first bishop here, Bishop Pierre, decided that they would give a 2-week possibility of priests moving from north to south, south to north.
That's very unusual.
It is, and in fact, it's kind of contrary to the law. So I was not happy because the person that I had picked out to be my successor in the tribunal, so it was my ticket out of the tribunal back into a parish, he decided to move south
Oh.
before he went for studies. We're about to send him for studies. So I went up to the Archbishop, knocked on his door, and I said, Archbishop, you cannot do this. You know, at the stroke of midnight, the Diocese of San Jose becomes the reality on that date. Mm-hmm. And I said, everybody remains in place. So whoever is in Santa Clara County, they're in the Diocese of San Jose and vice versa. And the Archbishop Quinn, just looked at me and he said, sue me. So I said, thank you, Archbishop, and left. And that's what happened. A lot of the older guys came from Santa Clara because they wanted to be with the old Archdiocese. Mm-hmm. And then the younger guys, the new church, all of the things that were happening down here, the beginning of Silicon Valley, the growth was down here, not in the north. Well, most of it was down here. So they came south, and it was quite a tsunami for the Archdiocese, actually.
When I was studying canon law at Catholic University, mm-hmm. I needed to do a thesis project to complete the degree. Mm-hmm. And so I said, we had a transition between the Archdiocese of San Francisco and San Jose becoming a diocese. That implies all kinds of canonical issues to do that. Okay. I said, can't I do a comparison between San Francisco, San Jose becoming a diocese? And I said, everyone would be extremely helpful to me, the Archbishop, Bishop Domain, Bruce Agnew. I would get all this information and sources. I could do a great job if I could compare it with one or two other dioceses. And my advisor sort of paused, said nothing for a minute, and said, you have an unusual diocese and an unusual archbishop, he said. Wow. They were friends before the split. They were friends in the split. And the archbishop was very fair in the split when it happened. And he said, it is not always so. He said, you're going to have a very difficult time finding another diocese that might want to talk to you so you could compare it with San Jose. Why don't you think of something else?
Didn't that kind of make you proud?
Well, it did, but it was also slightly discouraging.
Oh, sure. You had to come up with another project.
I did. So, but anyway, I think that gives you a key into the diocese. Mm-hmm. It was a model split between two bishops, but two Christian gentlemen as well.
Exactly.
And that's how we started out, which was a very good way to start out.
It really was. It really was.
Monsignor Mitchell, when he was Father Mitchell and was the one of the founders of the Diocese mm-hmm. of San Jose, set up an incredible system for lay people and personnel, not per se, but for example, we had central payroll, which made it very, very easy for us to organize a lot of what was going on, and our retirement system was really well done. So if it hadn't been for him, I know I wouldn't have gotten as far as I did in the HR system because of the systems that he set up.
Mm-hmm. My wife and I at the time were living in Fremont in the Oakland Diocese, right. And we were very involved in St. Joseph's Parish over there, and she was actually religious education, faith formation director there. So I wasn't too aware of, at the parish level, the dynamics of the change. But I was very aware that Helen Hansen became a director of Catholic Charities and was on a peer, and therefore a peer with all the other directors throughout the country.
Wow.
And having worked for Helen, I was certainly very proud for her and for the diocese. But Helen retired, and I was asked to apply for the position, which I did, and was fortunate enough in 1983, so 2 years after the diocese had been formed, to become the director of Catholic Charities for San Jose. It was a tremendous organization. Helen had built an unbelievable foundation over the years. One of the things she did, which is certainly very relevant for today, she was one of the first directors in the country, I believe, and I know for sure in the state of California, to get the county to help fund immigration counseling services.
Wow.
And in 1986 was the last time Congress passed a Comprehensive Immigration Reform Act, 1986. And when that happened, we had to double the size of our counseling program overnight, our immigration counseling. And I still have vivid memories of listening to stories of some of those immigrants who had come into this country undocumented and who now saw this ray of hope for the future, and most of all for the future of their children.
Yeah, I first met Father Boyle when I was actually at St. Justin's, because he'd come down and help us on different occasions, like for Christmas and Easter.
Sure.
He was a good friend of Monsignor Matasti as he came down there.
Yeah.
And Gene was someone who always had broad vision. He was a great reader. I don't know if he slept very much at night, because he read so much in his time. How he got into the Social Justice Committee in San Francisco, he and a layman, John Delury,
Yes.
which really started working on things. And that's where they got into the whole thing of racial justice in the city, the whole thing of the farm workers.
Yep.
So all these things he got into. And through the farm workers, he got to know Cesar Chavez and worked with him down there. But also, he was just known as someone speaking out for social justice very, very clearly. And he could do it very well. He had a radio program he was on and did that too, and things. And but then he went down to Stanford University as Newman chaplain. And he did something that was not able to be done from the beginning with Stanford. Stanford did not allow Catholic services or things to happen on the university campus. Yeah. That's why St. Anne's Chapel was built.
Because it was away from campus.
Yeah, Claire Booth Luce, her daughter who was a student, was killed in an accident, so she built that for them. So they had things there. But Gene, went and through his connections with the campus, got ways where they could have celebrations at the Memorial Chapel and do things on the campus. So he really
huge.
It was huge for Stanford and for everything. I mean, because now I think that's the largest events that are happening on there.
I think so.
Religious events are there with the Catholic community there.
Yeah, which is flourishing.
Yeah. But anyway, that's again what Gene could do on things. And then when the diocese was formed, that's when when I actually came into the office at the time, at around 85. That's when Pierre asked Gene to come into the office in charge of interreligious and public affairs. So it had to do with connecting ecumenically, doing things like that. Also the spokesman for the diocese. So Gene was very much involved in the whole thing with the Vietnamese, with the Cupertino project.
Oh, yes.
All these things that were happening. He was very much involved there. And he was very bright, and he could do things very well. And so those were...
When I came here in 1988, of course, I heard about the problem in San Jose with the so-called dissidents. When it actually happened around 85 or 86, I was still in Canada. And I didn't hear much about it. So when I came here, suddenly everybody, those who are non-Vietnamese, would ask me, what do you think about the situation in San Jose? I said, sorry, but I just came here from Canada. I heard something, but I was not part of the story. But then I tried to explain to my friends or those who are not from the Vietnamese culture. I said maybe because this is the first generation, so they would like to their identity or their culture is so important to them. They would like to be able to have a community of their own, to have their celebrations or cultural expressions, and maybe we need to have some mutual understanding. They are not immigrants, but mostly, if not all, they are refugees. Yes. Even myself, even though I was in Canada as an immigrant, but I still see myself as a refugee. Plus, we left Vietnam in a very dramatic way, and many escape prisons or persecution.
Yes.
So it's very difficult. So they wanted to support each other.
When I came to the United States, the first thing that I noticed was the multi-ethnic aspect of this church. Yes, definitely. You had the Vietnamese already at St. Patrick's, you have the Hispanics, you have the Filipino community. One of the things that I like very much from my formation with the Sulpicians was to teach us that the face of Christ is multi-ethnic. And being able to be formed with that vision that the church is multi-ethnic, and that even though we have the same faith, we express our faith differently.
Exactly.
And to me, it was a gift, really, for my faith, being open. I mean, one of the things that the Sulpician taught us was to be open, to accept, to be attentive, and to be surprised by how people express their own faith, and you become very respectful of that. Having that as my formation, as the background, and then I was assigned to St. Maria Goretti.
Oh, why?
Exactly, which is, as you know, is very multi-ethnic. It's a very large community, and you have three main communities. You have the Vietnamese, you have the English-speaking, and that means also a lot of Filipino, and the Hispanic people, mainly from Mexico. What I noticed at the past, one of the things that I learned was the importance of that each community needed to express their own voice. Yes, in fact, I remember, because you hear a lot of stories when you're a seminarian and also when you get ordained, the first things that I was exposed to that because I was in the seminary was about the agentes pastorales. Remember that? Where there were two sisters, Sister Gloria and Ana Maria Pineda. One of the things that they did that I remembered was that they used to have a meeting they used to have a meeting of all the agentes pastorales. The agentes pastorales were the leaders, the priests and the leaders of all the Hispanic community. And they will gather and they will identify issues, discuss issues, and then they will present that to the diocese. In my opinion, that was very effective. And the reason I believe was very effective, it reminds me to what Pope Francis is saying today. Pope Francis is inviting us to create room.
That's right.
To create room for difficult discussions, for dialogue, and so when I heard the Pope Francis saying that nowadays, immediately my mind went back to the back. And I thought, our diocese has been doing this from the very beginning.
Very beginning, even before.
From the very, even before. That is correct, even before.
Pierre, as we know, is a very private man. He's shy and very, very bright, very erudite. He was always very helpful to me. He has a very subtle sense of humor. I would go out and visit the parishes, and I'd come back here to this house for dinner. Pierre loved to cook, and I'd be in the kitchen with him, and he'd be chopping and dicing and doing all this. And he'd say, well, where'd you go today? And I'd name the parish, and he said, and, how was it? I said, oh, great, and it was just wonderful. And he'd say, did they mention this to you? I said, no. And they said, and how about this? Did they mention that? No. So he demythologized, a lot of the stuff.
This enthusiasm.
Exactly. So it was a great time. It was really a flawless transition.
It was.
And that's not true in some cases. Sometimes there are difficulties with the incumbent bishop and the coadjutor bishop, but we had nothing like that at all.
Bishop McGrath had decided that we needed a deacon formation program. And he asked, first of all, he had Father Tim Kidney do some of the exploration, kind of check it out. And and then Father Tim was asked to go, I think it was to St. John Vianney, I'm not positive. So he asked about Father Jack Bonser taking over as director. And I had worked with Father Bonser in the at the Institute. So we decided that we would go up to St. Patrick's Seminary because the Archdiocese had its formation program there. And we thought, well, why don't we see about combining forces? So we go up to St. Patrick's Seminary. We meet with the director, priest of the Archdiocese. And we find out that their formation program was the equivalent of our Institute for Leadership and Ministry. It's kind of like undergraduate. So we left there, and I said to Father Jack, I said, oh, are we going to have to put something together? He said, no, we are going over to Santa Clara, and we are going to go talk with Santa Clara.
Yeah.
Santa Clara was absolutely wonderful about that. But it's also a two-way street. They were telling me, particularly the graduate program in pastoral ministries, it's because of their work with us with the Deacon program. They are now doing deacon formation in different dioceses in California.
Santa Clara University and the Graduate Pastoral Ministries program had a long history with the diocese. Much of that story is told and retold. There's different versions.
Of course.
But maybe a version could be that, inspired by the Second Vatican Council, the Jesuits at Santa Clara had thought that it would be good to establish some kind of program that would prepare men and women for ministry in the church. Mm-hmm. And it's coincided with the establishment of the new diocese. And because Bishop Dumaine himself had such a love for education and for the church, he had a conversation with the president of Santa Clara at the time, and Father Rewalk. Mm-hmm. And I think Father Rewalk, in that conversation, asked him, well, what can we do for you? And Bishop Dumaine said, help me form the lay ministers for the new Diocese of San Jose. So all these converging interests and desires came together.
It's wonderful.
And that gave life to the Graduate Pastoral Ministries program, which actually has formed the majority of lay ministers who are working in the San Jose Diocese.
Both
and
ordained and non.
Exactly.
So our seminarians now are at Our Lady of the Lake in Mundelein. Can you tell us how that came about?
Yeah. Mundelein is a great seminary. It's the largest seminary in the country. It was actually built to be the Catholic University of America. Mm-hmm. The cardinal at that point of Chicago lost in the votes, so went to D.C.
Right.
So, I mean, it is a top-rate place. It's in Chicago, unfortunately. So
it's a distance.
It is. We have sent our seminarians from the inception of this diocese to St. Patrick's Seminary. Mm-hmm. Obviously, our foundation as a diocese is rooted in that decision. We were founded from the Archdiocese of San Francisco. St. Patrick's Seminary over the last several years has gone through a significant amount of transition and change, which wasn't the ideal environment for young men to be discerning and being formed as a priest. So ultimately, Bishop McGrath thought that environment was not the best place for our men, and we were open to looking at all the major seminaries that were suited for what we were looking for in our location as Silicon Valley, very diverse environment and cultures here in the county of Santa Clara. And so there was a team of priests and lay people and leaders in the diocese who interviewed what our needs were from various people and around the diocese. And then looking at what the needs were, we went out to all the seminaries in the West Coast, major seminaries in Mount Angel and St. John's and Camarillo. We were also looking at seminaries in Texas and Washington, D.C., as well as Mundelein, since Mundelein is the largest seminary in the country. And after visiting all those seminaries, we decided that Mundelein was the best fit for our men.
I appreciate how Mundelein prepares us to become pastoral. In fact, one of the motto of Mundelein Seminary is prepared to shepherd, because our rector believes that we're here because we will become shepherds, we will become parish priests, and not just priests whose locked up in the rectory studying.
Who know a lot of theology, but not people.
Exactly, but through our prayers and the spiritual preparations that we have, we will bridge that to the lives of the people we encounter in the parish. So not just sacramental priests, but really priests out and involved with the many different activities that our parishioners are doing.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we have different programs here in the seminary, is to foster the community life. So we will be able to reach out to the people, and so not to close into ourselves, but to reach out and to open ourselves to others.
You know, at St. Patrick, you could change your pastoral assignment every single year. Here, what they're trying to do is, from your first year, when you start, they assign you to a parish, and you will remain at that parish until you're ordained. So you get a chance to build relationships.
Wow, this parish is all about relationships.
Yes, yes.
Tell me some of the changes that you've seen in the diocese over the last 20 years.
I think the changes are rather radical. I'm surprised how much things have changed in the last 20 years. The presbyterate has shifted from a presbyterate that was primarily formed at St. Patrick's to a presbyterate that has been formed throughout the world. And that's brought particular gifts as we're dealing with and ministering to immigrant communities. But it's also a challenge. It's also a challenge to form a cohesive presbyterate when the cultural and formative experiences are very different, and at times even the ecclesiological understandings and expectations of parish are very different. So that's been a shift, it's been a gift, it's also been a growth experience, not just for the immigrant communities and priests, but also for those of us who have been formed here.
Sure.
And ultimately, I think it's going to serve us well as a diocese, but in the midst of it, I think there are some growing pains.
Well, I see we're blessed, I think, in some unique ways in our diocese. I think our two other principal languages beside English are Vietnamese and Spanish, but we also have many other cultures in the diocese. I found out just recently that the city of San Jose is the most diverse city outside of New York City.
Really?
And most of that is because of the tech world. That people literally come from all over the world. And I think when we look at the Vietnamese community, I think we're going through some generational changes there. Yes, we have newer immigrants in the Spanish-speaking community coming in, but the Spanish-speaking community has been here for generations. I mean, many of them actually woke up one time and found out that this part of California was no longer a part of Mexico. So I think when we look at the newer immigrants, raises certain challenges, but we also have in the Hispanic community people that go back generations and are bicultural. And then we have the Vietnamese community, newer in some ways. We are the largest city of Vietnamese outside of Vietnam. And that brings with us various challenges. They tend to focus more in a microcosm within their own. They're a church within a church for a lot of very obvious reasons, most of them being immigrants at this point and just beginning second and third generations. And with that brings cultural conflicts within their own culture.
Sure.
As people get acclimated to the U.S. society in its multiplicity of cultures, it's harder to preserve the root culture.
I think it's more of having a support system. I think it's important. I think I can speak for myself of being foreign born. It is a challenge, to be in a place where you don't know everything.
Yeah.
So you always ask your elders, and it's just like in our own families. You ask if you don't understand something or you're not sure. So you go to the people that you trust, you know, people that would support you. So I think that is something. I think that is great to have, you know, a particular group to belong.
Yes, I am a Vietnamese. I've learned things here in English. So I'm just go between. As a priest, I've learned in English, so terminologies are in English. So at time when I speak in Vietnamese, there are some I still struggle with to translate into Vietnamese. Not only to translate into Vietnamese, but also whether they are the usual daily saying or not. So that's one challenge.
I can imagine.
On the other hand, I continue to work with my English to improve it, and because I believe in the communication, whether in Vietnamese or in English. So yet I'm a Vietnamese priest, but still English is a priority for me to continue to improve. At the same time, get to know the Vietnamese terminology in the daily uses as well.
I can imagine.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you did your pastoral year at St. Maria Goretti, is that right?
Goretti, right.
What was that like?
It was a great experience.
It was a good year.
Great experience, because I really understood, you know, another kind of really important, I think, factor or what our diocese is about, what makes us so unique, is that sense of multicultural diversity, right? And to see a parish where we're trying to juggle between the English-speaking community, Spanish-speaking, Vietnamese, Filipino culture, right? Just kind of
all under one roof.
All under one roof. You know, it can get messy. But to be in the midst of all that helped me really appreciate what, you know, San Jose is about, right? And
Father Gerardo Mechaca said the same thing. He said it's wonderful chaos.
Wonderful chaos sounds very
descriptive.
That's just about right. You know, but also I made a decision while I was in my pastoral year that. You know, multicultural ministry is something very important for me personally and for the diocese. So I said, I'm going to learn Spanish. I'm going to learn Vietnamese to make myself accessible.
Yeah.
You know,
I believe that the Hispanic community is a blessing in our church.
I would agree.
I believe that. I believe that. Again, I will emphasize the need of us leaders who are who can connect to my people. I admire and respect people who are not his priests and lay person like yourself, who are totally bilingual and bicultural. You made a choice to learn Spanish and to work with my people, and I'm very grateful for that.
It's been a blessing in my life.
I'm very grateful to priests. I mean, just having like Father Steve Kim.
Yes.
Learning in Spanish. And Father Kevin Joyce.
Father Steve Brown.
Steve Brown. I mean, there are so many priests who have made a choice to learn the language and not only the language, the culture.
Exactly. Who've gone to study in Mexico and have.
That is correct. Yeah. And to me, that is the model. And I would like to see that in the whole structure of the church. So even what the bishop said, that he would like to see maybe a Hispanic bishop or someone who speaks Spanish, I pray for that as well.
How do you see the future of our diocese? What do you see as our strengths? What kind of challenges do you think that we're going to face?
Well, I think our strengths are the two bishops we've had. And the kind of vision that they've had and the kind of history that we've had, the foundation in, you know, for a great deal of lay involvement. And as I understand it, that precedes the creation of our diocese. That Santa Clara County always had more lay involvement and lay leadership than the other counties in the Archdiocese. The presence of Santa Clara University helped that. And, and so I think that history, that foundation, that culture is a strength here. I think the challenges going forward are really facing every diocese in America. Pope Francis is asking all Catholics to understand ourselves as missionary disciples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the parish system in the United States has been very successful but limiting.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to be looking at both mission and maintenance. And I think the parish structure is heavily loaded on maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
maintaining important ministries, important services. But then that gets our focus internally rather than looking beyond ourselves. And I think that Pope Francis is absolutely right. We do have to be looking beyond ourselves. We have to be going to the margins because there are lots of people that could be served by the church, could be invited by the church, but they're not going to come to us.
Right.
We have to go to them. And we have to be willing to listen to them and understand their experience. And right now, there are not enough disciples that are excited about that vision and equipped to move in that direction. So I see numbers of committed, passionate missionary disciples, both ordained and lay, to be the biggest challenge ahead of us.
As a valley here in Silicon Valley, our growth has been so rapid that we're struggling to come to understand parishes that have fewer unifying factors.
Can you say a little more about that?
Well, parishes in the past traditionally had stable residents who had been in the parish for generations, or at
Raised
least
their kids,
raised their children, had been through the school. And many of our parishes no longer have that common foundational experience. Additionally, as we have grown rapidly here in the county, parish boundaries are amorphous.
They certainly are.
And so people will follow a particular priest or a particular liturgical experience. And so there's far less identification with a particular parish. And lacking that identification, I think it's more challenging to engage people. And then once people do engage in the life of the parish, then I think we have a deeper sense of community in who we are. But I think getting that initial engagement is a challenge at times. I also think there's a shifting challenge of trying to engage people in a religion of symbol and of myth and of story when they're used to immediate sound clips and video bites and a technology that is forever present. And I think we see that perhaps more profoundly here in Silicon Valley, where we're so immersed in technology that at times to tear ourselves away from that, even for Sunday worship or for prayer, is difficult.
Well, there's a lot of challenges everywhere, no matter where we go, but I'm going to start with strengths because I think that's what we have. We have a strength of the diversity. We're in a great county. There's an incredible amount of dedicated folks here. We have a diversity that we're one of the most diverse counties per capita in the country. Numbers will be Los Angeles County, but in terms of per capita would be our place. We have the largest population of Vietnamese outside of in San Jose, outside of Vietnam. We have a real active Chicano community, Mechaca community, Mexican.
Long history.
A long history. A strong API community, Asian Pacific Islander folks. And I think that we have a lot of Anglos that grew up here, and then a bunch of new folks that are European Americans that have moved into the area that are appreciating the diversity of this. So the diversity is really the strength, and we can make it work. We show that we have strong gun laws. We also have fewer deaths. We have strong civil rights, and yet we have extremely profitable businesses. There are challenges in our county, which is really regional. It's affordable housing is impossible. The challenges of the diocese is keeping our talent. Our lay workers, and includes social workers at Catholic Charities and any other of these smaller agencies. Our pay is isn't able to sustain people living here. So people are leaving all the time, and we have talented lay ministers that we simply cannot pay, and that's a challenge. The question is, what are we going to do as a diocese? And I think that we're struggling to figure that out.
Something we're all quite aware of, it's on the front page every day, is the housing crisis and the fact that we have, in one of the richest parts of the country, that we have people living on the streets and living in their cars, living in tents, and that working class people can't afford to live here, that are considering moving out of state. And that is a tragedy, because where will we get teachers and plumbers and firefighters and police officers, those that are essential for our community? So, but we have some of the smartest people in the world living in the Silicon Valley. And so we can solve this crisis. We just need to put our minds to it. We need to come together at the table and go at it. So I'm anxious to begin reaching out to some of our elected officials, our public servants, some of the private industry. In some ways, they've maybe not so much caused the crisis, but exacerbated it, and they have responsibility for a solution as well. So I don't have all the answers, but I do want to be somewhat of a catalyst for driving at a solution.
For the future, that all that has begun might continue, that we can be dedicated to it, that the lay leadership, the collaboration, the infleshing of the Second Vatican Council. I read something yesterday that most Catholics are at Vatican I. I'd like to be definitely Vatican II.
It's time. It's been 50
it's
plus years.
50 years, and we've had the liturgy wars and we have the culture wars. We have to remember that we're one people. Depending wherever we come from on the spectrum, our language, our culture, what form we like to celebrate the Eucharist, we're one people.
Yeah.
And I also like from Eucharistic Prayer 3, one body, one spirit, that we are one body, one spirit in the Lord, that we walk together, we help each other, we are a family, dysfunctional at times. What family isn't?
Yeah, precisely.
And that we care about each other. From the least to the greatest, and that we're equal, all of us.